Oh, gotta hide us for a second here.
Coaches. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, they can't hold a flame against you, ay. Blow the whistle, blow the whistle, blow the whistle, got the game, it ain't no issue, yeah. Blowing the whistle, I had enough with you, the championship, it is gone. Ain't listen to you, I can't give it to you, cause you don't know what I've been on. This is the Coaches Podcast, ripping up everything, podcast.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome into the Fantasy Coaches Podcast. This is your host, Coach Steve, and with me, as always, is my main man, Brown Curtis. What's going on today, Jibs?
It's going good, man. We're a rare Friday podcast, and we're here today, and I'm ready to bring up some good news and some bad news for certain players. But yeah, I'm glad it's Friday, and I'm feeling great.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's down to, I always love a good Friday beer and talking fantasy, and we got a lot to talk about today, guys. Obviously, if you're reading the title of the episode, it's the NFC South we're doing. If you've been watching us over the last month and a half, we're just doing a little bit of a Dynasty talk, doing some by division, and today's the South, which is there's so many players we need to talk about. There's so many great fantasy players that we need to mention in terms of their Dynasty value and where do you see them moving forward right now. But before we get to that today, we got a ton of news, actually. We actually have some real news coming up. Obviously, free agency starts next weekend. All the pro days are starting right now, so I would definitely check those out if you guys really enjoy things like that. You kind of learn a little bit about different players. But in terms of the news, guys, obviously this week happened. It started with Dak, and he signed that. Oh, we got franchise tag, but he's planning on signing that 4-year, $160 million contract with $75 million of it in year one. In year one, Jibs. So, now that we've already kind of talked about Dak here, we already mentioned him as a great player. We all really liked him as a top, 5 fantasy dynasty asset now. Now, what does that do for everyone around him? Is it just continuing the bandwagon that we did last year? Everyone is a plus, everyone you want on your team.
Oh yeah, I think everyone's gonna hop right back on the Dak bandwagon just because he was kind of a cloudy pitcher with the contract, and now that's out of the way. Basically you're gonna get your production. He's gonna be a top 5 quarterback throughout the season, and he's gonna be a great asset for dynasty managers moving forward.
Yeah, honestly, if you had him in dynasty and you held on to him, I mean, you're sitting pretty now. He's got probably one of the top 5 offenses right now in the NFL, with 3 amazing wide receivers, a tight end duo that's great, and obviously Ezekiel Elliott. All these guys right now for me are bumps up in just terms of their value over the next couple of seasons now, because you're going to have this entire unit at least for another probably 2, maybe 3 seasons. So it's definitely great for everyone. Hopefully the Cowboys can maybe at once, I know, Jibs, you wouldn't want this, but maybe actually get past the round 1 of the playoffs. So we'll see. We'll see how that works out for them. But in terms of dynasty, it's great for them. A couple of the news is Chris Godwin signed his franchise tag. He didn't sign it, but he got franchise tagged. Allen Robinson, which we really wanted him to go somewhere else, got franchise tagged as well. But we'll talk a little bit more about him next week. Emmanuel Sanders, and we're not going to really talk too much about Sanders today, but Emmanuel Sanders got cut. Is there any hope left for his dynasty value right now, Jibs?
I think so. He's a gritty veteran wide receiver who's been notably just going to places and being productive. So I think he'll find a nice mesh somewhere. I think, obviously, as him being an old guy, I think he'll want to play for a competitive team. So I think he could find a great fit. What if he goes to the Packers, on some dumb stuff? Perfect.
Possible wide receiver 3 value. Yeah, I mean, I love it. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be going out to get him in dynasty, but if you have him already, I mean, yeah, you hold on to him, and hopefully he ends up in a situation with a playoff team, like you said, Jibs, and can kind of give you that wide receiver 3 boomer bust value most weeks. So again, he's up there in age. He has some injury concerns over his career lately, but again, he's nothing more than a wide receiver 3 or 4, depending on the team he really goes to. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm sure that his veteran presence will be needed somewhere in the NFL right now. So, all right, continuing on the news, John Brown got cut, and this is big. I mean, obviously opens up the door for a guy like Gabriel Davis, but We'll talk about both these guys real quick here. But Gibbs, what is John Brown's value right now? Is he similar to a guy like Emmanuel Sanders, or he could be even better? You're on mute, my friend. There you go.
And I'm dealing with another animal. Yeah, I think John Brown is a very intriguing kind of guy because he's obviously younger than the aforementioned player, and we've shown to be a great receiver as well. Like going to the Bills and establishing stuff there. What was the other team he was on? Was he on the Ravens, right?
He was on the Ravens and the Cardinals at one point.
On the Cardinals, and he was quality players as well. So I think John Brown will have more value, and you probably should hold on to him in the meanwhile. But I do like to see where John Brown's going to land. I think he could be established as a really good player there anywhere because, like, you see how the NFL is kind of operating, trying to get like the quick kind of guys in their offenses.
Yeah, no, definitely. Again, like Emmanuel Sanders, he's a little bit younger though, so that's obviously a little bit of a better news for his dynasty value right now. But John Brown is definitely a guy where I think he's a good hold right now to see where he lands because he could end up like Emmanuel Sanders in a Packer situation, in a Cardinal situation, maybe again Chiefs situation. Like there's situations where John Brown could thrive for us in fantasy right now. But again, his departure opens up a big opportunity for a guy like Gabriel Davis this coming year. The I think 6'3", rookie wide receiver this past year who had a pretty decent season actually. Almost made it as a top 24 wide receiver. How high does his fantasy value go up? I mean, I think at this point you're probably not going to be able to buy him, but do you like his potential moving forward, Gibbs?
I like his potential moving forward. Like Josh Allen's going to need another receiver with John Brown being cut, and we saw Gabriel Davis being an established guy definitely down the stretch last season. So that wide receiver room I know goes through Stephon Diggs, but there's definitely a room between Cole Beasley, being that he's still playing and going to still be healthy and whatnot. So Gabriel Davis is definitely getting a good boost, and I don't know what I'll pay for him right now.
Would you give up your late first for him? I did a poll on that the other day on Twitter. So what would you give? Would you give up your late first for Gabriel Davis right now?
I wouldn't do it.
You wouldn't do it? No. Actually, it lost. The first round pick was, I believe, 75% to 25% Gabriel Davis. Again, his hype is a little bit much because he is still the wide receiver 2 on this team. Well, he could be the wide receiver 3 on this team. I mean, let's not forget Cole Beasley, like Jib said, his value is still relatively high because he has that connection with Josh Allen there. I love Gabriel Davis, the talent. There's a reason why I went out and bought him everywhere. He could be in for a good season, but I don't know if it's worth giving up your first-round pick because there's a wide receivers that are out there that will probably fall to the end of your drafts or running backs or whatever it may be that could be instant starters from day one. Gabriel Davis is going to be the 2 or 3 on this team, so probably wouldn't give him a first. I'd probably give up my high second for a guy like Gabriel Davis because he's a good building block to see if he can flourish into this offense with a guy like Josh Allen. But like the poll said, first-round pick probably wouldn't give up for Gabriel Davis just yet. That's a little too rich for my blood. And we move on here, and there's some big news at last. I think it was this morning, both. Now, I think yesterday was the Mark Ingram news, but Mark Ingram signed a 1-year, $3 million deal with the Houston Texans. What do you make of this backfield now? Is it, David Johnson was someone I kind of liked this year, but now with Mark Ingram there, it's both basically just you kind of screwed yourself as on this team now?
I think this team's in shambles, man. They got like 2 30-year-old running backs, Duke Johnson, if he's still on the team. So
he actually got released, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So, like, they're going to roll with those 2 guys. I don't think it's a bad combo, to be honest, if you're going to combine both their skill sets. But in fantasy realm, like, you're definitely not going to be kind of hopeful for, like, 10, 12 carries and someone getting a touchdown and the other person gets the touchdown. So I don't really like it at all. But if you have a Mark Ingram, man, like maybe it's your time to kind of flip him for anything you had, especially if you were just kind of holding on to him, knowing that he got cut by the Ravens a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, no, I think I saw on Twitter someone traded a second and a third round pick they got a second and a third for Mark Ingram. Oh my God, I can't talk today. Mark Ingram. So, I mean, the value is out there if someone thinks that he can kind of have a turnaround career once again in Houston. Again, I think, David Johnson was, I think, a pretty solid RB2 going into the season, but at this point, I think they're both RB3s at best moving forward. Ingram, obviously, more in a standard half point where, I think David Johnson sees more of that PPR receiving value because there's a limited core of wide receivers. He may actually see more of a value because of his PPR floor. He may stall that opportunity to be at RB2, but in reality, these guys are RB3s at this point. I wouldn't want to acquire them, but if you could sell high on them at this point now, they're both over 30, or they're both hitting 30 at this point. That's really all these guys are, sells at this point. And if you're going to hold on to them, they're RB3s. They're not going to be full-time starters for you.
Yeah, I picked them up yesterday and flipped them to an RB needy team. Got a second-round pick.
Hey, you for Mark Ingram?
Yeah.
I mean, I'll take that all day. Give me a second-round pick for Mark Ingram all day, and I'm loving it. All right, and let's finish up the news here. Cam Newton signs a one-year deal worth up to $14 million. Now, a lot of that is incentive-based, and they may still bring in another quarterback. If you guys read my article I posted just about a couple of weeks ago, I'd say buy Cam Newton. I mean, he might have a starting job again, which it seems like right now he has a starting job. But, is he someone you sell high on now, Jibs, that he got this one-year contract? Do you sell high on that value right now?
Oh, yeah, be gone. Capitalize. Like, you saw what Cam was last year. The guy was literally a running quarterback and barely throwing the ball. And we saw just, oh, my God, like the wide receivers were just he just demolished New England's value. It's just basically the running backs and him. So, he can score fantasy points, and he's getting old. This may be his last gig. So you might as well starting gig at least. So you might as well just kind of pat the butt. Show him.
Yeah, no, I believe that. I think you could maybe get a late first still, possibly. I said buy him for a second, and people were probably doing that. And I think you could sell him now for a late first for a contending team who thinks he can. And again, you use the argument he had COVID last year. He had no weapons. You assume the Patriots, who have a ton of money, going to bring in a whole bunch of new offensive players to help build around this guy. If they're going to do that, he's got touchdown upside. He's got a rushing floor. You sell him off for that. I mean, after this year, who knows what his value is going to be? Who knows if someone's going to want a Cam Newton after this coming season? But he's going to be on the Patriots for right now, so it's a good time to sell high after hearing the news. All right, so we're going to go right into the Dynasty talk because we're already at a high minute here talking. So as we guys said, if you guys have been listening to us, we're doing our Dynasty talk. We're doing every single division, and now we're sitting at the Atlanta Falcons at this point now, guys. And they have a new head coaching regime here with Arthur Smith now, but Matt Ryan is still here. Is it a buy time for a guy like Matt Ryan, or are you not trusting him to make a kind of a rebound season in his career? Like, is he going to be a QB1 again in his rest of his career?
Like the QB1?
Not the QB1, but a quarterback one still.
Oh, he was top 12 last year, so.
So can he still do it?
Yeah, I think he still could do it. To be honest, I wouldn't mind buying him, especially since if you're looking in the quarterback market, like he was average 18 points last year, which is all right. It's not going to kill you. Like, you definitely need more production from other players on your team. But Matt Ryan's definitely shown potential to have breakout game. He has explosive weapons, Calvin Ridley, Julio Jones, even Gage and OZ too. So and Hayden Hurst. So we're gonna talk about all of those guys. But Matt Ryan, I think he's not gonna be top dollar quarterback you have to pay for. So I think if you're a contending team, I think you can make the offer work, try to get him, especially to establish your second quarterback in Superflex and two quarterback leagues.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like I said, I don't know if I personally want to buy into Matt Ryan. His value seems to be really connected with Julio, and it is the numbers, guys. And the 7 full games he played with Julio, full games, over 75% of Julio snaps at least played. He averaged 324 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 40% of a pick. And he averaged 22 fantasy points a game. That's the Matt Ryan I like. That's the Matt Ryan I liked going into last season. And then the 8 games that Julio did not play in full or missed, He averaged 255 yards, a touchdown, a pick, and 14 fantasy points a game. And again, we all know Julio, we'll talk about him in a second, but his injury kind of status right now, his age kind of growing up on him, I don't know if I want a guy like Matt Ryan on my fantasy team right now. I would rather sell to a contender who thinks Matt Ryan can still be a QB1. Again, like Chip said, it's possible still. But I'd rather sell that value now. I don't think his value is ever going to see a higher percentage as of right now. Again, you maybe want to wait until the season gets closer and the quarterback situations kind of fall around. But no, you don't want to wait closer because if Atlanta drafts a quarterback at 4, Matt Ryan's value is going to hit the shit in a year or two. So I think this is a great time to sell Matt Ryan now, hoping that someone team wants to have him for going to the season to be their quarterback 1. So get the value, I think, for Matt Ryan now that you still can. All right, and we switch over to running back now, Jibs. And then at this point, he's considered an old guy. But Todd Gurley, I mean, the man came off the season very quickly, very well, actually. He was a top 5, top 8, I think it was, top 8 RB the first 8 games of the season. Then he fell apart completely due to his injury. But is there any future hope for Todd Gurley?
I'm not really optimistic. We've seen it with the Rams. We've seen it with the Falcons. He just kind of breaks down eventually during the season. So it's a no for me, dog. But maybe now that he's released, he could get an opportunity with the 49ers since they love running backs and they love
injury running backs.
Yeah, the ones that miss time. So it could be a perfect situation. But Todd Gurley, maybe he could find a nice situation where he doesn't have to be the lead dog. Maybe he could just fill in, but I don't know. It's just like a villain guy now.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because he was just basically 2-3 years ago. He was the RB1, the fantasy player #1 overall just a few years ago. But again, guys, he ran his second worst yards per carry, 3.5 this past season, his lowest touchdown output. That kind of what made Todd Gurley was the touchdown opportunity he kind of showed us every single week. And at this point, I mean, the first half of the season, and he was on a great pace, and then he got injured in week 10. And again, we always know his knee injury is going to be an issue for us in fantasy, and I don't think anyone's going to buy Todd Gurley. You're kind of fortunately stuck with a guy like Todd Gurley right now because no one's going to buy into Todd Gurley. It's just not going to happen. I'd love him in a couple places if he were to go there, but at this point, I don't really see him being anything more than a complementary role piece to somebody in an offense. I don't think he has RB2 value at this point anymore, and if you still have him, I mean, you're selling yourself short on a guy you probably got a good investment for. So at this point, you might as well ride him out. And if he can play another year or two and give you some kind of RB3 value at this point, I'd take it because getting a third or fourth back, I don't think you're getting your value for a guy like that. So that's kind of how I feel about it. You kind of stuck with him and hope that his future turns around for us in fantasy. So, all right. And over to the wide receivers now. We mentioned Julio Jones before. Obviously, he's one of the greatest of all times to play this game here. But do you sell high on Julio now? Is this the time to sell high on him?
Yeah, as awesome as he is, he's getting older and older. And I don't have him in any leagues, but if I I would sell him just because, Julio, as what it is, I know he hasn't missed some time in his career, and he does put up explosive numbers, but I just want to capitalize on it right now. I just don't want to wait. He's 32 years old. That's not that's the twilight years for wide receivers in a sense. I know we say 27 for running backs, but Julio's getting older. There's kind of murky situation about how they want to proceed as a franchise. Are they going to blow it up? What are they going to do with Julio Jones? What are they going to do with Matt Ryan? So you never know what's going to happen. So he's a good player, but you got to get him off your team. So,
I definitely agree with you, Jibs. I mean, he's definitely a sell candidate. I probably want to wait until at least we get close to the season to sell a guy like Julio. And it's nothing against Julio. He could end up having a really great year, but again, he's going to be 33 going into next offseason. We're not really going to want a 33-year-old wide receiver at that point. No one's going to pay big bucks for it, but this may be his last opportunity to see a decent role. And I think you wait as the season gets closer. You hear reports that Julio is healthy. He's ready to go. And you trade him away for a 2022, 2023 first rounder and get him off your team if you're not being competitive this year. If you are, you hold on to him and kind of ride him out if you have to. But I sold him this past mid-season to a guy who gave me 2 first-round picks in 2022. And that's fantastic value. And I think you can still get good value for that for a guy like Julio Jones right now in Dynasty. So I think he can kind of turn it around. I mean, but again, he's never been a big touchdown guy. And if he continues to see injury-like seasons, it's concerning. But again, when he's on the field, I mean, he averaged 15 points or more in 6 of those 7 games he was fully available. And so he's got that talent there. But it really just depends where you are in your fantasy league, kind of, at this point. All right. And heading over to the next guy, wide receiver, Calvin Ridley, playing the Robin role to, Julio Jones' Batman. And this season, Calvin Ridley, breakout season, wide receiver 1 in fantasy, not the wide receiver 1, but close enough to it at least.
He was a sure dog.
He was. Where's his value at right now? It's wide receiver 1 value, right?
Oh, of course. Standout wide receiver 1 value to me, especially given the situation. He was playing with Julio. He did well. I know he had some bad stretches. He was hampered a game or two, but even that stretch at the end of the season without Julio, he just performed from week 11 to week 11 to 16. Like, the lowest output was 14 points in PPR, and he had 3 explosive games in the playoffs to kind of end the season. So I don't have any fear of him not playing with Julio on the field. It's definitely better for our situation, but like Calvin Ridley, I'll definitely pay my first round pick for him. High first round.
I'd probably give up. I might end up giving, if I'm a contender right now, I may give up 2 first picks for Calvin Ridley. That's how much I love Calvin Ridley right now in fantasy. He's in a prime part of his career right now. He's a guy who just sees touchdowns. Worst of his career is 7. I'll take that every single day. And he missed 1 game the first 8 games and still managed to be the wide receiver 1 in fantasy. And the biggest thing is that he had a breakout season, and with Julio in and out of the field, you were able to see that him being able to be that wide receiver 1 for this team right now. So if Julio were to leave this team, per se, Calvin Ridley can handle the wide receiver 1 and be a productive fantasy wide receiver here now. And the fact that he sees so many red zone targets, he saw 22 this past year, he was 2nd in the league. He's a guy who's going to be 26 years old this year, prime time of his career. I'm buying into him. He's a wide receiver 1, and honestly, he's probably a top 6 wide receiver that people aren't giving him that kind of credit for, because he doesn't have that flashy offensive scheme like a lot of these other wide receivers do, but he can match these guys in fantasy points. So a guy like Calvin Ridley is a buy. Even though it's not at low value, it is at peak value, and it could be even better this coming season. All right, and then Russell Gage, the wide receiver 3 on this team here, he had a pretty decent season here. Very decent in terms of a flex option, but do you buy into the season that he had or not?
I'll buy into it. Like, I just like the Falcons' philosophy. I don't know how much it would change with the new coach, but you just saw how deep the wide receivers went, whether it was him benefiting from Julio being out. Like, he's definitely if I'm playing in a PPR league, I want to have a guy like that on my team. I think he could be a wide receiver, like a middling, like maybe wide receiver 4, 5 throughout the Dynasty League season. And like, he's not going to be like a guy who you're going to be like relying on, but like when you need to start someone, I think he'll definitely won't hurt you. And that's what I like. Like, the wide receiver, we all saw it's historic. Like Sanu, Ridley, Jones, like they always had Roddy White, Jones. They always had 3 wide receivers.
They have, and I looked into the history of that because I had to know. I mean, they have a history of having at least 3 players over 70 targets, 3 wide receivers at least having 70 targets. So there's a chance for Russell Gage to continue this. I mean, he definitely played better with Julio on the field. So there's that. But I mean, he saw 17 red zone targets. Again, only 3 touchdowns. So it managed, if he actually end up catching more those targets and possibly getting touchdowns, he could have had a better season than he already had. I think he's a good guy. If people aren't high on him, I think he's a good buy still. I think because if Julio goes in the next year or 2, Russell Gage could end up seeing that number 2 role behind Calvin Ridley and be someone productive for you in fantasy football. So he's a slot guy, but he's definitely someone, if you can still buy low on him, and I mean low, I mean the 3rd, maybe a late 2nd, see what he's able to do and see if he's able to kind of break his shell and become a better consistent option than he was last year. But yeah, I'm buying into his season. So, all right. And then last but not least, the tight end position, and Hayden Hurst came over from the Ravens. first season, there's a lot of hype about him having a great year after the Austin Hooper year in 2019. Again, decent season here now. But will Hayden Hurst take another step, Jibs?
He could, like the season wasn't like bad. It wasn't good. So I think he could take a step just basically with the state of the tight end position last year. Um, I just think even with the new offensive coordinator going there, I mean not new offensive, Tennessee's old offensive coordinator to being the head coach there, I think they could definitely utilize him, seeing like how impactful he was with Delaney Walker going to Jonnu Smith and all that. So it's just all about the Falcons just trying to rebuild in that like offense and trying to like go out and win some games. But I like Hayden Hurst. I don't think like he's gonna be a top 7 tight end, but I think like he's a guy in 2 tight end leagues or like a tight end premium leagues. I think that's a guy like you kind of will want, especially given the fact that he seems to have better performances when he does get a decent share of targets.
Yeah, no, completely agree with you. I don't see him being a top tier tight end. I think he's going to be a decent tight end. The guy who's a top 10 tight end still, maybe the back half of his tight end. But there's just too many weapons here right now. Unless that switches to the way they kind of focus the tight end position more, and they did that at times in Tennessee with Jonnu Smith. But you saw also Jonnu Smith kind of have in and out games over his career there. So I don't know if Hayden Hurst has that ability in him to be a top tier tight end. He's already, I believe, 28 years old. So I don't know if he's going to really take that next step in his career. So if honestly, he's kind of just a hold if you're at the tight end position here. But I mean, I wouldn't mind selling him if you could get good value for him. That's kind of how I feel. I think he's an average guy who sees background, tight end 1 value moving forward in terms of Dynasty. So, all right. And let's head over to the next team now. And guess who it's going to be? It's going to be the New Orleans Saints, guys. And the New Orleans Saints, there's a lot to talk about with this team. There's so many great players here. Obviously, Emmanuel Sanders just got cut from the team, but there's a quarterback situation here now. Drew Brees is likely to retire. It'd be a shocker if he were to stay this coming season here. But again, anything is possible. So that leaves us 2 options here. A guy like Jameis Winston, who probably a lot of people seem to probably pick up in their Dynasty startups this past season or the season before, as hey, he's going to be behind Drew Brees this year. He's going to elevate to being a quarterback starting guy again. But if you have him on your team here, do you just sell if someone's willing to buy high on him, or you hold on to him because he has that potential to be a QB1 still, Jibs?
Oh, I'm selling.
You're selling?
Well, yeah, I'm putting it all in. Give me what you want. I'm taking it.
You don't think he's going to be you don't think he's going to be starting quarterback?
No, I believe him. I believe in him being a starting quarterback, but I also want to cash in the situation. If we held on to him, picked him off waivers, or just held on to him when he was signed to the Saints, and you're just waiting for his opportunity, I'm pretty sure that you probably have like established option. You haven't been relying on Jameis Winston. So say if you had 2 viable quarterbacks and you needed a spot, like maybe a running back or a positional upgrade, you have to cash in on that. Maybe that pick will be that opportunity, especially given a super flex league or something like that. I'll say like that in that circumstances. I don't think you're going to be flipping Jameis for nothing like in a 1 QB league.
Yeah, I don't know if you're getting your top value dollar right now, but if he was re-signed with the Saints, I wouldn't mind selling high on a guy like Jameis. I don't know if he can be a consistent option for you in Dynasty, and I think I'd rather get the big value off a guy like Jameis Winston, who we've had him have issues being able to keep control of the ball with a numerous amount of turnovers. He's had double-digit turnovers all 3 seasons. He started 16 games here. I mean, he got that potential, to throw 4,000 yards, but the touchdowns weren't always there. I mean, he only had 2 seasons over 25 touchdowns, and I don't know if they're going to be the same Saints with a guy like Jameis Winston if he comes back, or if he goes somewhere else. I don't know if he's going to have that same value because of the Bruce Arians system that had him airing the ball out consistently his 2019 season and made him a top 3 guy. So I think Tibbs is right. If he lands back with the Saints, you sell high on him now and get the value you can for him, because I just don't know if he's going to be someone. And again, if you're a contender, you want to hold on to a guy like that if you need him. But if you're not contending, I wouldn't mind selling a guy like Jameis. So, but on the flip side of the coin, there's a guy like Taysom Hill, who's 31 years old, who's a not a standard regular quarterback, you could say, in this league here, but he played 4 games last year and he dazzled the fantasy world during those 4 games. Obviously, with the tight end situation he had, eligible, it was a cheat code off a hat. But does Taysom Hill present a guy that you want to hold on to? Where is his value at right now?
I think I'll have to hold on. I'll hold on to him.
Yeah.
I really can't gauge his value though.
His value really depends on if he gets a starting job or not. And I think if he does, he's a guy who I think will put up fantastic fantasy numbers for you because he doesn't have that kind of trend on his career. He's not young, but he's still a very mobile quarterback you saw last season here. And he could be someone who performs to a high standard of, we all these rushing quarterbacks nowadays. He obviously can rush the ball probably for 500, 600 yards. And he throws well enough, I think, to get by. So, I mean, I'm holding on to him. Again, I'm not trading for these guys because I just don't know what's going to happen. It could be Jameis. It could be Hill. You just don't really know. But if I have a guy like Hill right now, I'd still want to hold on to him because I think he could present a higher value than a guy like Jameis in New Orleans right now. All right. And New Orleans is kicking themselves because obviously the loss of Drew Brees, but how does this affect the rest of the core now? Do you have concerns with a guy like Alvin Kamara without Drew Brees on the field to feed him the ball?
Well, I do have concerns about the whole offense and how it's going to be like operating moving forward. Like we did see those games when Drew Brees was out and Taysom Hill was at the helm that Alvin Kamara was kind of ghostly, or ghastly, I will say, like in terminology, but then we saw Alvin Kamara kind of pay dividends at the end of the year. So like I think Alvin Kamara is going to be like a buyer's beware in drafts, redraft or startup dynasties because you don't know what's going to go on with the situation. He's still an elite player. Don't get me wrong. I don't think Sean Payton's going to just forget how to use Alvin Kamara out of nowhere, but there is concerns of the utilization.
That's honestly a great point there. I mean, I think Alvin Kamara is that type of player who I think he may not be as top 5 heavy, but he might be a top 10 with a guy like Taysom Hill. He may not be a top 5 with a guy like Winston, but he still may be top 10, I think. Winston never really threw to the running backs to that high extent when he was in Tampa. I think his best season was a guy like Charles Sims, who had, I think, 45 catches one season here. So his history with tight running backs have not been to that full standard. And obviously, Jib's right. Sean Payton's not going to forget how to use Alvin Kamara, but I think Alvin Kamara will do enough with his career that I think he'll be a guy who can see himself into maybe being 30 and still being productive because the way he plays the game. So I'm not selling Alvin Kamara. I'm actually holding on myself, honestly. And again, if you have him already, I think you hold on to him. But if you don't own him already, I wouldn't want to go out there and buy him, or like Jib said, pick him in a startup draft, because I think at that point, if you have him, you know what you got with him, but you don't want to go into a situation that's already on the decline. And that's kind of how I feel about it. I'd rather go get a guy like Jonathan Taylor, who has a long career ahead of him, than go get a guy like Alvin Kamara, who is on the back half now of his NFL career. So, all right. Going over to the next guy here, and right to wide receiver at this point, and the main guy here, Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas, obviously a big disappointment this past year, but he was out for injury for most of the season there. But are you concerned with Michael Thomas without Drew Brees? I can't hear you. You're on mute.
Yes, I am concerned. I guess I'll say I'm a little concerned with Michael Thomas without Drew Brees. I know how efficient he was with him, and just the pure target share and this kind of easy passing opportunities that he presented with him. But I think with either quarterback coming back to the Saints, I think he'll still end up in the wide receiver 1 range, albeit it's not going to be that wide receiver top 5 wide receiver. We're not going to be drafting him in like the late first round, early second rounds and stuff like that. Like maybe he'll fall back into that like second range, but I just think the volume's going to be there for Michael Thomas at the end of the day. It's just the efficiency. Is he going to be dropping more passes just because, not necessarily dropping passes because like the passings are not going to be that well, or they're going to be off target or stuff like that. So that's the only thing I have concern with Michael Thomas. I think he's there for the long run, and he's still going to be that phenomenal player that we have.
Yeah, no, definitely. I get your point there, Jibs, but I'm still buying into a guy like Michael Thomas. I think people have kind of thrown him into the ground after an injury-ridden season and without a full season of Drew Brees.
Oh, for
I
sure.
mean, he was wide receiver 29 with Jason Hill. It wasn't great, but he had a game in there that was really bad. He was just coming off injury, too. Let's not forget that. I mean, he was decent enough that he could have been somewhat productive with a guy like Taysom Hill, who was just feeding him targets because he was the only player he would be okay throwing to. And again, if Jameis Winston were to go there, we all know Jameis Winston can air the ball downfield and get the ball out. So Michael Thomas is going to see 10-plus targets most weeks anyway. And people are talking like Michael Thomas is washed already. Michael Thomas is, he's going to be 28 by the time the season starts, but he's only been in the league 4 years, 5 years now. I think this is his 5th season. So he is definitely someone I'm still looking to buy into because I think he can still have a bunch of very productive seasons going forward here. I mean, I think he was on pace if he played his games the back half of the season still to have, over 1,300 yards. And I think if he would have played his games when he came back from the season here, he would have averaged out to 148 targets, 120 receptions, 1,300 yards. Again, touchdowns would have been the little thing, but that's wide receiver 5 in 2020. So, I mean, he still has that value. He's still going to be the wide receiver 1. You lose a guy like Emmanuel Sanders. You lose Jared Cook. There's no one else to throw to besides Alvin Kamara. So, Michael Thomas, I think, is a good still buy candidate in terms of dynasty right now. All right. And then last but not least here, Adam Trotman had a ton of hype. We kind of mentioned before with Jared Cook being released here. Is he a tight end that's on the rise for you, Jibs?
Yeah, he's a tight end on the rise for sure, given the landscape, and like he was a good tight end in college. Like with Jared Cook being at the helm of the tight end core in New Orleans last year, he probably didn't get his opportunity to shine. I know he had one game last year towards the middle of the season where he did score a touchdown and whatnot, but he's gonna have the opportunity. Like maybe he could be that breakout. I wouldn't say like a total breakout next year, but he got definitely get more reps, played a significant snap share, and it could be his time to shine. We saw, say, if Jameis is the quarterback, we saw how he uses tight ends a lot as a safety valve, and I think Taysom Hill wouldn't mind having a guy like that either.
Yeah, no. I like him as a rise candidate right now. As not a breakout, but a guy who I think has a good season and is on his way to a breakout season in year 3 here now. I went back and did the history of the tight ends for the New Orleans Saints, and all but 2 seasons over the last decade, they've had at least a top 15 wide tight end. Again, top 15 tight end isn't the most luxurious thing, we all know that, but top 15 is still top 15. So, I mean, if you get a guy like Adam Trotman on your team, he's likely to give you somewhat of a decent season for some certain weeks of the year where he produces for you. So he's a young guy who had a very successful college career in terms of catching the ball. And by the midseason, he was averaging over 45 plays a game, and he caught 15 of his 16 passes. And 171 of his yards last year, 117 of them were yards after the catch. So he's a guy who can be very, very dangerous with the ball in his hand once he catches the ball. So he's definitely someone I'm buying into. It may be the wrong time now, unfortunately, because the way the landscape is going and people are like, oh, Adam Trotman's on the rise. You might have lost your buy low window at him at this point. But if you have him, hold on to him. I don't think he's someone you want to sell. I think he's someone you want to hold on to because I think he can be one of these next good tight ends as we go forward in Dynasty right now. So Adam Trotman's definitely on the rise for me. And we move over to the next team on our list here, the Carolina Panthers here, guys. And this is going to be an interesting team here. Wrong team here. There we go. All right. And the big guy is Teddy Bridgewater at this point. I mean, he's the quarterback for now, but is he a quarterback in that dead zone where you don't really want him in Dynasty?
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
He's just he's a middling quarterback too. That should be the poster child if he the poster child for a quarterback two standards. Um, Maybe in a super flex league, if you're kind of like riddled by injury or something like that, mid-season you want to acquire like a guy like that just to kind of get by if your flex options aren't as like aren't as better than that. But like given like the situation, like maybe you want to like act like the DAC manager if like the rehab isn't progressing well, or the owner who just lost Drew Brees, or they have an aging veteran quarterback, or maybe even hit up the Joe Burrow owner and see if like he wants to have like a kind of like run till to start the season off. So I think those are some destinations that you kind of like ease in there with Teddy Bridgewater as a, like an option to kind of get off your team.
Yeah, no, Jibs, that is fantastic options right there. I love that actually. Yeah, I'm not high on Teddy Bridgewater either. I mean, he only produced 5 games over 20 fantasy points. Again, he had a full season. It's not like he was coming off an injury and he just started playing now. He's been kind of healthy the last couple seasons now, and he had the weapons. It's not like he didn't have the weapons. I mean, even Mike Davis played to somewhat of a high level last year, and yet he still performed very minimal. Again, he's a Super Bowl quarterback and more in the NFL, but in terms of fantasy, the rumors are that Carolina is going to probably take a quarterback some way, somehow. And I want nothing to do with Teddy Bridgewater. I'm selling him if I can. Sell what you can for him because I think in another year or two, he's going to be a backup who may see starting job if someone gets hurt. I mean, I don't hate Teddy Bridgewater. He made a remarkable comeback that no one really talks about too often, but he just doesn't do it for me in terms of fantasy right now. He doesn't have that it factor to put you over the top week in and week out, unfortunately. All right, and we move on now, guys, to Christian McCaffrey. And again, Jibs, is Christian McCaffrey is still the number one dynasty player right now.
For me, yeah, like even if he missed that whole year, and we could still talk about injuries and all that stuff, and just kind of misfortunate, like him getting dinged up with the shoulder, like with like what a minute and a half, like 50 seconds left in the game, like that sucks. But this guy, when he was on the field and he performed in those 3 games, scored at least 24 points in PPR. And that last game, we missed him for 8 weeks or so, and he comes up and just lets up for like a 37-point game. Like this guy's elite talent, and I just if I have number one pick, I'm not passing on him. Not at all.
Yeah,
I'm
no.
sorry.
No, Jibs, you guys don't know, but me and Jibs just doing another Dynasty startup because I'm crazy and I love to spend my money for some reason on Dynasty football, and I've convinced Jibs multiple times to buy a team, and somehow he does it anyway, even though he says no. But I have the second pick. I know the first guy's likely to take Patrick Mahomes in a super flex league, so I'm definitely going to get Christian McCaffrey probably at 2, and I'm excited about it. So I've never had Christian McCaffrey on a team, so I'm very excited about this. And yeah, I mean, he's a guy who averaged 26 fantasy points in the 3 games he played last year. He was a dominant running back who is a dual threat guy in the passing and running game. He's going to see most of the work. He should be healthy by the time the regular season starts. He's going to only be 25 years old by the time the season starts. So he still has another 2 or 3 seasons of pure dominance probably in this league here. And that's what I want in terms of Dynasty. People might be selling him off now. You might be able to buy on him on a cheap low right now because of his injury. I want all the Christian McCaffrey shares I can get at a reasonable cost. Or if I'm picking in startup leagues, he's my number 1 guy. Outside of Pat Mahomes in a super flex, he's my number 2 guy then. All right, and then we move on to wide receivers right now. And DJ Moore, had a decent season actually. People don't really talk about it. But it wasn't to the standard we all thought he was going to be, as we talked about his value moving forward. But is he someone that you can buy low on right now, Jibs, or is that going to be too rich for you?
I think you could buy low on him comparatively to like the end of last season, where like his value was probably at the astronomical high, and we saw that like he had a decent season, yes. But then in the beginning of the season, like there was like sputters, and we were like, oh man, we were so mad about DJ Moore, and he kind of turned it around, and he made some dividends on like a lot of like great like yards after catch plays, and it kind of like sort his value up. But the guy's going to be 24 when the season starts. He's a young asset. I don't think he's going to go for like a first plus like he was going to go for last year. I'm sure you're gonna get a first plus something, but it's not gonna be like another like first round pick from another year or something like that or so. So like I'm not taking anything less than a mid first round pick. I'm not talking
You
like
sell him for a first or get him for a first?
to get him. I would not take anything, or if I was selling him, I wouldn't take anything less than.
Okay, there you go. There you go. Yeah, yeah.
Right, yeah, you're
How
right.
much would you give up the fourth pick of the draft for DJ Moore?
I would do it in a heartbeat.
Okay. The second pick.
I'm keeping that second pick.
If I didn't need an RB at number 2, or if it was a non-super flex, if it was a non-super flex, obviously, I probably would because I think his.
Yeah, I think he'll be better than the wide receivers. I would rather have DJ Moore than the wide receiver at that point. But if it's a running back, I have to consider.
Yeah, I mean, he's 24 still. I think he's still growing into his role in this NFL world here, and I think if you can still buy low on him, again, that might be giving up the second pick in a rookie draft. I like that. I mean, yes, you want to give the Jamal Chase. I feel like I'm saying his name wrong, but the Devontae Smith guys, you want to get these guys, but go get. I'd give him my second pick to get a top tier veteran who's only 24 still going into this season, who I say has another 4 or 5 seasons still to be pure dominant in this league. And I think when they get a quarterback they really like in Carolina, DJ Moore is going to go over the top, and especially with Curtis Samuel being gone now, targets could open up a little bit more for him, even with Christian McCaffrey coming back. So I think he's a good buy low now if you can somehow.
And then I have one more, no, 2 more. So I will give up David Montgomery straight up for DJ Moore if the owner needed a running back.
Heartbeat.
And then kind of like a hack shack trade, maybe like Melvin Gordon, Deontay Johnson for DJ Moore.
Heartbeats on those, honestly. I'll do it. That's for sure. All right. And now we go over to the other wide receivers. But who would you rather have moving forward, Jibs? A guy like Robbie Anderson, who's been really productive over his career, depending on the situation he was in, but productive season this year that many people did not see from him. Or a guy like Curtis Samuel, who is young still and came off a pretty strong stretch at the end of the season, who was a free agent and could be in a better situation.
I'm going to stick with Robbie Anderson. I liked his role in the offense. And that was with all 3 wide receivers having like a phenomenal year. So if there's one less guy out of the situation, I think he'll be better. Even like comparatively speaking, like Robbie's role in the offense, like, comparatively to Curtis Samuel, Robbie Anderson definitely edged him in air yards. 1,324 air yards to Curtis Samuel's 716. So I think the way they utilize Robbie, he's a speedster, and maybe they do make that upgrade in the quarterback position. I think he could definitely be a candidate on the rise. But Curtis Samuel is definitely an intriguing option. I think a lot of smart offensive coordinators in the NFL saw what they did with him in the Carolina, and they could definitely utilize him in their offensive roles.
Yeah, no, definitely. I don't hate Robbie Anderson. I'm probably going to go on the other side of the ball. And it's not just because Curtis Samuel is a younger guy. I think he can be more explosive than a guy like Robbie Anderson in the league. I think Robbie Anderson is good, but I think Curtis Samuel has still yet to show us he can be even better, I think. And if he gets to the right situation that uses him to the talent that we saw this past season, that's what can do it for me. He's got that rushing floor, which is cool. He's got that red zone opportunity he saw last year. And the fact that he's played all over the field. He's played in the slot, he played on the outside. And I think with the increased number of targets he could get in an offense being their wide receiver 2 or maybe even the wide receiver 1, likely a wide receiver 2, he could provide maybe top 15 fantasy value possibly. I think he has that in him still. And the fact that he's younger just adds an added bonus for me. So I'd rather have, if it was a straight up trade, I'd rather have Curtis Samuel than Robbie Anderson. No doubt. And the tight end situation, let's be real, guys. I mean, I don't really see it being a factor. Ian Smith. Is it Ian Smith? I want to say is Is it Ian Smith, Chips? Now I have to look it up, guys. I'm sorry. Panthers tight end.
Ian Thomas.
Ian Thomas. I knew it was Ian something. Ian Thomas. Yeah, he didn't really show us anything. Again, he wasn't targeted to that much either, but I just don't really see that Carolina tight end having much value right now in this offense here. They clearly prefer to have another, and I think Carolina will draft a wide receiver too at some point in this draft to kind of fill that Curtis Samuel role at some point. So I'm not going to talk about tight end. So, but let's finish up with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here now, and there's a ton of things we got to talk about here. And Tom Brady, if you haven't seen today, signed his new contract that goes to this 2022 season, which will put him at 45 years old by the time his 2022 season is over. I can't believe he's going to be this old. How is he doing this? My body at 29 is already in pain. I don't get it. But what's his value now that you know you have Tom Brady at least possibly another 2 seasons, Jim?
It's like you got like an extension on life. I'm sure if you were trying to sell him at the end of last year, hoping to capitalize on the situation, you could definitely do better on the offer, trying to get him out there, knowing that he does have another 2 years under his belt. We saw that Tampa Bay already tagged Chris Godwin, which we're probably going to talk about soon, and they're probably trying to just reload and try to do it all again this year. So I think they're going to provide weapons for him. I don't think he's a bad quarterback. He was top 12 quarterback at the age of 43, and top 7 actually. But I think the guy is a good quarterback. Like, I know there were certain games he kind of let you down, but there was a lot of games where he just outperformed and was a top 5 quarterback on a weekly basis.
Yeah, completely agree with you, Jibs.
Maybe you can get a 3rd round for him. I don't know.
I think at this point, I mean, if it was a non-superflex, maybe I think you had to give up at least a 2 in a superflex league. I don't know if anyone's really given up a 3rd, but maybe. You never know. But I think if you're a contender, I wouldn't mind having Tom Brady. He's got the weapons around him. He threw 600 times back-to-back seasons in his 40-year-old age. I mean, come on. The guy, he had a good season. I can't put anything against Tom Brady. I'm not a fan of Tom Brady, obviously, as a Dolphins fan, but I mean, he was number 1 in red zone attempts, default attempts in general. He was 2nd in touchdowns. I mean, he had his receivers drop 81 balls throughout the season, was the 8th best and worst, I guess you could say, in the league. He had one of his best seasons in the last decade. I mean, he's someone that I'm still looking to get into my team, like you just said. I mean, if I'm a contender, Tom Brady is definitely a guy I could see being my QB 2 or 3 right now.
I agree with you. I'll take my statement back.
Hey, you have your own thoughts. It's no big deal, my guy. It's no big deal. All right, RB time now, guys. Who has more value moving forward, Ronald Jones or Leonard Fournette?
No, I'm gonna go with age, and I'm gonna say Jones.
All right, yeah, I'm on that train too. Lenny could still surprise us and land with a better situation. I think he comes back. I think they rode this team back, to be honest. That's kind of the way I see it, but I think Ronald Jones is just so underutilized, his ability, and I think if he had I think Ronald Jones needs a new situation to be really productive in this NFL. I mean, he was a guy, he was RB4 the 3 games at Leonard Fournette. He was killing it. 100 yards in 3 straight games up until I think week 14 when I think
he fumbled the ball away.
No. He always fumbles the ball, and that's his downfall. He fumbles so much, but Dalvin Cook was the second other person that had run 3 straight games of 100 yards. That's how crazy it was that Ronald Jones did it so early. And again, Leonard Fournette didn't really play well until he got to the playoffs. And I don't know if that is just the factor of that Ronald Jones didn't see as much work. Well, he was banged up at that point. And Lenny Fournette just kind of was like, all right, there's no one behind me. I'm a veteran. I can do this. And he just kind of did it on his own. But I think Ronald Jones is still a guy who can be very effective. He was very effective running the ball here this past season. And just that those drops and pass protection kind of kills him, but I think he still provides more future value than a guy like Leonard Fournette does. I think Leonard Fournette is either bucks or back or won't see a full-time starting job in my eyes moving forward. All right, and then over to the wide receivers now. And again, this might be an easy question, but do you want Mike Evans right now or Chris Godwin?
I'm taking Godwin.
Godwin is the age.
The age, and I just know with I guess with the media reports, they're saying they're trying to use a franchise tag as a placement for them to get a long-term extension. So I think they'll have him there for the next 4 or 5 years. And Mike Evans, phenomenal player, but I just like the steady stream of targets rather than opportunity. I mean, capitalizing on the deep ball and touchdowns.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like I said, I guess Mike Evans is 28, Chris Godwin's 25. It's clear you want Chris Godwin, but I'll make the case for Mike Evans. I mean, 7 straight 1,000-yard seasons, 7 straight 100-yard target seasons, at least 8 touchdowns over the last 3 seasons here. He clearly was Tom Brady's guy during the season. I mean, he had that connection with him. I think the way you look at these two, I think Evans sees the touchdowns and Godwin sees the receptions. Godwin, again, had a little bit of down season, but I think with the injury, I think he'll be back and good to normal. He's definitely the clear guy you want in this offense here, but Mike Evans is still a guy I'm still looking to acquire as well. I think at this point, I think Godwin's value is going back up now, so if you can still buy low on him, definitely do it. Mike Evans, people are trying to sell Mike Evans off. I think if you're a contender and you want to buy into a wide receiver, I think Mike Evans can still be a very productive fantasy value for you in the next 2 seasons, I think. I think he could be a guy who plays into his 30s and plays very well for you in fantasy. So both these guys provide strong value moving forward. So, and then we got a couple more to go, but does AB turn around for you? Can he still be a guy that you want to get into, or is this just like, he's probably going to play for the Bucs again? I don't see him being anything more than a wide receiver 3 at this point.
I think he's going to play for the Bucs, and he's going to be a wide receiver 3 again. But kudos to him for having a bounce back season and getting back in the NFL.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I don't really see him being more than a wide receiver 3 too. I mean, I think with Chris Godwin on the field, it just limits his ability unless Chris Godwin continues to drop balls, which it could be possible. We could see at least another season maybe, but it's less likely that he's going to do it. He saw 47 targets the final 7 games. Chris Godwin only saw 48. So there's a chance there, but I just don't see it. I don't see him being a wide receiver 2 or anything like that. So, and then 2 guys. I mean, AB could not be back. We don't know still. We really don't know. But maybe is it time to buy on guys like Scotty Miller and Tyler Johnson?
Yeah, buy cheap.
Yeah, I definitely want to buy cheap on both these guys. I think Tyler Johnson, I think he showed opportunity that, we all know that Tom Brady doesn't like rookies that much, that he could still see some kind of decent role. He's a guy who can be the 50-50 guy, someone who has that polished route running ability to his game still, and he's got great hands. And then Scotty Miller, I mean, he was a top 40 wide receiver the first 8 games. He could have probably done better if he would have seen the starting role more often. These guys are someone I'd be buying into lately, and see if maybe AB doesn't come back. Maybe he doesn't, and then one of these guys prompts up to be the wide receiver 3 on the team. So definitely a good opportunity to buy low on these guys now before AB resigns. Oh, if he doesn't resign. All right, and then last but not least, OJ Howard came off strong last year, right before he got hurt in week 4. But would you want to buy a low on him, or does a guy like Gronk possibly coming back prevent you from wanting to buy low on OJ Howard?
I would love to buy low on OJ Howard. And then Gronk, yes, it'll put a hamper on him, like fantasy-wise, throughout the season. But Gronk's definitely an old man, and he was fortunate enough to stay very healthy and all that good stuff. So, like, I'm still not gonna be putting his injury history in like the past. But OJ Howard, just good, great player, great size. I think if Tom Brady had him for a full season, he'll do great. And lastly, like, just being that, like, just Tom Brady kind of running like Patriots light down there, like they utilized 2 tight ends. Cameron Brate had a somewhat of a good season, especially in the playoffs. So I think OJ Howard could fill that void as well.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. I love OJ Howard. He's got such a tremendous talent to his game, but he's been hurt the last couple seasons now. He's not been able to stay on the field. He was underutilized at times. It's very unfortunate. I think him in a better situation would be so much better for him, but he could still provide tight end 1 value going in this coming season here. He very much could. He's coming off that Achilles injury. It's tough to come back from, but He could be someone who could provide you with that top-tier tight end value still, not top-tier, but a tight end 1 value. And people are kind of forgetting about him. If you could trade like a third-round pick for him, a second-round pick for him, and get him on your team in a needy tight end premium league, I would definitely make that opportunity because I think he still has a chance to bounce back in his career. He's still young enough to do so. Gronk might prevent that to some extent. But again, Gronk's already 32 going into this season. He's a little older. He may just play that backup role when Brady really needs him to his fullest. And again, he's still someone I'd be okay buying low into if he's available for a low price because he can provide you value, like Jibs just said, like Cameron Brate was this past couple of seasons here. So this Tampa Bay team's got a lot of opportunity to really be good. It's just if Tom Brady can keep throwing that ball around. So it's going to be interesting to see what we come this season here. This is a lot of very high quality dynasty players here in this division here. So, but Jibs, I think we're done, man. I think we're all finished for the night, man. Yeah. So guys, we thank you guys for tuning in today. Thank you for the thumbs up, whoever that might have been. I just seen it there. Oh, Jesse Clark. Yes. Jesse Clark is one of our guys on our team here. He does our DFS special. He's got his own little DFS show on the Fantasy Coaches. He also does some baseball stuff too on Rap. So if you haven't checked him out, do that as well for us guys. So we thank you guys for listening. As always, please go check out our website at www.thefantasycoaches.com. You can follow us on Twitter at Coaches Fantasy. You can follow me at Coach Stephen P.
Hot take Concho.
So give us a follow, guys. Hit us up. We're more than happy to help you out with any of your dynasty questions. And tune in until next time. We'll be back talking NFC North and hopefully some free agency talk too. So tune in until then, guys. Take care. Have a good one, and see you soon.